Now, over the next 3 days, 1,000 young people from across the Pacific region will converge on Auckland, aiming to turn the doom and gloom of climate change into positive action. The Power Shift Youth Summit kicks off this morning. One of the organisers, Brittany, joins me now. Brittany, thank you so much for coming in. Let's start off just by looking at what the aims of the conference. When you sit down and you plan this conference, what the aims are.
Yeah, so Power Shift's big aim is to show New Zealand that to us, climate change is no longer a side issue. It's not just an environmental issue, and it's not just a political game. So we've brought together hundreds of people from across New Zealand and from the Pacific Islands as well to work together, create a mandate for climate change action in New Zealand and make it on the political agenda here.
Because there's so much discussion about it in sort of a public forum, in talkback, in blogs, about climate change, and there's still a lot of doubt about whether it's reality, what it is, whether we should be worrying about it. That actually, I mean, is it a case that you just don't feel as though anything's ever being done about it?
Yeah, well, I was in Copenhagen in 2009 for the international climate negotiations that were held there. That was supposed to be the conference that would change everything. And what we learned very quickly over there was that the negotiations were being stalled, the action wasn't happening on that international front. So now our real power is in building that people's movement that's going to make climate change on the forefront of people's minds. Because for the people in the Pacific and for communities around the world, they are already on the forefront of climate change disaster. And so we need to take action now. We don't have the time to wait.
What's the motivator here? Is this, I mean, is it fear for the future?
It's not fair, and you know, as a young person, we are inheriting the future, and at the moment, the cost of climate change increases every day that we wait. And so the social, the environmental, the economic cost is being passed down to my generation, and we're the ones calling for change. We're saying we need this to happen.
What sort of response, because this isn't the first Power Summit, these have happened, similar ideas around the world, and what's been the response from those? Have you actually seen some momentum gained?
Yeah, so Power Shift events have been happening all over the world over the past 5 years. In India, America, Australia, Canada, the UK, and they've mobilised more than 25,000 young people just over the past few years. And what's really nice is we're seeing those young people work globally between each other. Participants from Power Shift are connecting with people via Facebook and via Skype, using the technologies, the gifts of our generation, as tools rather than just toys. Because
the whole idea here for you is that you just, as you mentioned, you just don't see that the politicians or our leaders in industry or socially are actually getting anywhere, that you guys have got to start some sort of momentum, some sort of groundswell for yourselves.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the things that we're doing at Power Shift is launching a campaign, and other Power Shifts around the world have launched campaigns that have been extremely successful before. In 2011, the Australian Power Shift launched a campaign that was to try and introduce a carbon tax there, and over the next year that did happen there, and that campaign contributed to that. So we're launching a campaign called 100% Possible. So,
well, which very quickly, I just want to ask you, the 100% Pure brand, which has been in the news recently, this is going to be mentioned at the conference? Is this going to be debated?
Yeah, well, we feel that as New Zealanders, we still really hold true to the 100% Pure message. We still want to be clean and green. But unfortunately, we're waking up, and the world is waking up to the reality that our actions and our policies don't always reflect this. So we're actually saying, as a youth climate movement, that the solutions are in front of our eyes, they are there, and it is 100% possible, and that's why our campaign is focused on that. It's showcasing all the local and the national actions that are already happening that exist to solve climate change.
Do you guys get angry when you, with your frustrations? I mean, what sort of emotions do you feel when you see something like the Copenhagen conference? This is huge, highly organised and attended, and yet nothing comes out of it from your perspective. Does it make you angry?
Yeah, it is very frustrating. But climate change is such a difficult issue to take on. It is embedded in everything that you do. For the most part, it is invisible, and it's also happening faster than anyone could have predicted. So while it is so urgent, we understand that there are the problems to making that change, but we also see all the solutions as well.
How are we performing, New Zealand, the Pacific, which is obviously the forum for this particular conference? How are we performing worldwide, do you think?
Well, here in New Zealand, we continue to open up our shores to mining and drilling while we overlook the potential of renewable and low-carbon options. And the international climate negotiations are happening right now in Qatar as we speak. And our government is really embarrassing us on a global front. They've been pulled out of the Kyoto Protocol, they're weakening the emissions trading scheme, and they're really showing that New Zealand is not committed to international action. So really, the people in power and the people that are supposed to be protecting us as young people are failing us.
You want to be a politician one day? Can you change it?
Particularly,
no? Yes,
only if I
maybe.
can make the change.
All right, Brittany Packer, good luck for the next 3 days with Power Summit. Thanks for joining us.